For those of you who don't know, I write articles for EDH Rec from time to time, and in July I wrote an article wherein I created a deck centered around one of my favorite cards from the new Lord of the Rings set, Radagast the Brown. The article link is in the description, but today I wanted to go a bit more in depth and highlight 10 cards that evoke the spirit of one of my favorite budget builds I've ever done. As always, this video is brought to you by the EDH Jank Center, your source for everything Commander, everything Jank, and I'm your host Jordan. Now let's take a look at today's Commander. Radagast the Brown is 2 green legendary creature avatar wizard from the new Lord of the Rings set. Whenever Radagast the Brown or another non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's mana value. You may reveal a creature card that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control from among those cards and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, and it's a 2/5. So a lot of people are building this card full of huge creatures so that you can loot through a ton of cards all at once, which is great. However, I went in a different direction, a weenie direction, if you will. We're going to be playing a ton of small 1 and 2 drop creatures, triggering Radagast's ability multiple times a turn and profiting off of cards entering the battlefield and being cast, and maybe even getting some storm payoffs in the process. The deck list ended up being $36.94, so there's plenty of room to upgrade as well, but enough about strategy, let's talk conclusions. Our first card up today is Oketra's Monument, 3 colorless mana legendary artifact from Amonkhet. It says white creature spells you cast cause 1 scabs, we don't care about that. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 white warrior creature token with vigilance. Hey, do not roll your eyes at me, my children. I am well aware that this card is meant for reducing the cost of white creatures, and we are fully in mono green here, but listen, we are going to be casting a ton of creatures in this deck. Hopefully, multiple per turn. This card will snag us an extra body every time we cast a low-cost creature. These 1/1s can be used to attack or chump block as we grind our way to a win. Also, I think this is a cute little nod to the fact that we're building a weenies deck, and the father of that style is white weenies. Alright, next up, let's check out Permeating Mass. 1 green mana creature spirit from Eldritch Moon. Whenever Permeating Mass deals combat damage to a creature, that creature becomes a copy of Permeating Mass, and it's a 1/3. So this deck very quickly became a place for me to slot in a ton of my favorite low-costed green creatures. Permeating Mass is a card I found in my collection one day, and I absolutely fell in love. No idea where I got it from, but I think this makes for a very fun blocker. If our opponents want to swing in, they're going to have to risk being blocked by it and having their creature turn into a Permeating Mass. Pretty sweet, and all for 1 mana, it's really fun in this deck. Coming up next, we got Brown Oof, or Oofy, or Alfie, I don't know how to pronounce it. 1 green mana creature, and Oofy, Alfie, I don't know. This version is from the Mirrodin set. You can pay 1 and a green and tap it, counter target activated ability from an artifact source. Mana abilities can't be countered, and it's a 1/1. I figured if this deck were going to be full of little guys, they might as well be cards that do stuff. Although you can build this strategy with just vanilla creatures, which I think would be really fun. Anyways, this card right here is a 1-drop that does stuff, folks. This card puts a stop to Birthing Pod, Isochron Scepter, and even Wayfarer's Bauble style effects. I love this effect, it doesn't cost much, and there will almost always be artifacts that we want to ice in a game of Commander. Next up, let's check out Primeval Bounty, 5 and a green enchantment. This one's from Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put 3 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life. Thanks to reprints, this card can now slot safely into a ton of budget brews, including our very own green weenies build. The tech here is pretty simple, guys. We cast creatures, we get more creatures. Much like Oketra's Monument, we just want to be capitalizing off casting creatures every turn. I know it costs 6 mana, but our deck is full of low-costed stuff, so I don't think it'll be a problem running this. With this card in play, not only are we doing that, but we can also reap benefits from casting non-creature spells and playing lands. Another card that does stuff, baby. We love to see it. Alright, moving on to Ranger class. 1 and a green enchantment class for Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. You can gain the next level as a sorcery to add its ability. When Ranger class enters the battlefield, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. You can pay 1 and a green to level it up, and it says whenever you attack, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. You could pay another 3 and a green and level it up again, and then it'll say you may look at the top card of your library anytime. You may cast creature spells from the top of your library. That's what we care about. So this card is a budget version of Augur of Autumn's ability, which you can also slot into this build if you'd like. We get value from first casting it with a 2/2 wolf, then we can beef up a creature, then we can start casting creatures off the top of our library, which will just be, yeah, it's basically just like having an extra card in your hand, so that's pretty good. I think having more cards in Magic the Gathering is pretty good. And all this for a nice price, I am into it. Let's move on. To Thorn Mammoth, 5 green creature elephant from Throne of Eldraine. It has trample. Whenever Thorn Mammoth or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Thorn Mammoth fights up to 1 target creature you don't control, and it's a 6/6. I honestly had forgotten all about this card, and I think it fits great in this deck. It's a nice beefy boy that upon entering the battlefield will trigger Radagast, and we'll be able to loot through the top 7 cards of our library. But it is also removal on a stick, much like Terrastodon, which you can also put in this deck. And yes, eventually it'll die if it fights too many things. However, I think it has a fun little synergy with one of my favorite lands of all time, Tyrite Sanctum. If we can manage to make our Thorn Mammoth indestructible, then we can cast and cast away and have our Mammoth be fighting creatures in perpetuity. Also, you cannot tell me that this doesn't look like Manny from Ice Age. Anyways, let's move on. And let's check out another Throne of Eldraine selection, Wildborn Preserver, 1 in a green creature, elf archer. It has flash and reach, and whenever another non-human creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay X. When you do, put X +1/+1 counters on Wildborn Preserver, and it's a 2/2. So I dig this card because we can cast it at instant speed because of flash, meaning we can trigger Radagast's ability on our opponent's turns. Not only that, we can also beef this thing up every single time we cast a creature. If we have leftover mana, we can feed it into Wildborn Preserver, and over time, this will become quite the scary attacker. And we have tons of ways to give this creature trample once it's a beefy boy, so this is an all-around schmacking card. Alright folks, let's take a break from our regularly scheduled programming to briefly talk about the last 3 cards in this list. One of the big perks of building on a budget and with janky or underutilized cards, which I like to do very often, is you actually end up having a good bit of money left over in your budget to purchase some quote-unquote better cards that cost a bit more money. So the 3 cards that are left in this list are those selections. Oh, and by the way, if you love jank, budget builds, and monthly giveaways, you should join the EDH Jank Center Discord. The link is in the description, kiddos. Next up, we're looking at Yavin, Nature's Herald, 2 green legendary creature elf shaman from Magic 2013. It has flash. You may cast the spell anytime you could cast an instant. You may cast green creature cards as though they had flash, and it's a 4/4. So this card is like Wildborn Preserver, but it gives all of our green creatures flash, allowing us to play our strategy on our opponent's turns, which if you've watched earlier episodes of Game Nights, you know that's pretty broken. This is obviously a much more narrow version of Vidalcan Orrery, but it is a version of it nonetheless, and I think it does nothing but great things for this build. Also, I would love to see Josh Lee Quide try his hand at building a Yavin Nature's Herald deck. I'm interested to see what he would come up with. So Josh, if you're watching this, man, I don't know why you'd be watching it, but if you're watching it, you should try it. Alright, moving on to a true all-star, Defiler of Vigor. 3 green creature Phyrexian Worm from Dominaria United. It has trample. As an additional cost to cast green permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. Those spells cost green less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of green mana you pay. Whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and it's a 6/6. Dude, this card goes insanely hard in any build that it's in, but in our case, this can get our deck from 0 to 100 very quick. Because a good number of our creatures in here only have a green pip in their mana costs, Defiler of Vigor makes it so that if we pay the 2 life, we can cast our creatures for free. Well, we're paying 2 life, but you know what I mean. Oh, and by the way, we also have that second ability, which will be consistently pumping up our board and allowing us to win through combat damage in no time. Small but mighty, and that's what Green Weenies is all about, baby. Alright, it's time to check out our last card and also our most expensive card of the day. It's Unnatural Growth. 1 green enchantment from Innistrad Midnight Hunt. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. This card absolutely smacks. This is another way we can win through combat damage, and doubling power is really good, especially if we've already pumped our board with an Overrun, Defiler of Vigor, or even Paragon of Eternal Wilds. But also, this triggers on every combat, not just our own, meaning our board of potential attackers also becomes a board of formidable blockers. I was so happy when I realized I could fit this in the build and still not even come close to touching $50. And just like that, guys, we're at the end of yet another video. Thank you so much for watching. If you dug this content, make sure you give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what cards you would put in a Radagast build. Did I miss anything? I'm always down there in the comments interacting with you guys, so come on down and have a chat with me. And if you're interested, you should absolutely join the Discord. The link is in the description. And that's it for me. I will see you on the next video.